Welcome back to Between the Lines. In our last episode, we explored the shadow line, that subtle boundary where intuition sharpens and the unseen begins to watch. Today, we're stepping into its counterpart, the liminal line. If the shadow line is the boundary that notices you, the liminal line is the threshold you cross without realizing you crossed it. The liminal line is the space between states of being. It's not a place, it's not a moment, it's not a supernatural doorway. It's a transition, a shift, a quiet slide from one version of yourself into another. Across my novels, the liminal line appears whenever a character steps into a new identity, confronts a truth they weren't ready for, enters a space that feels familiar and foreign at the same time, or realizes the world is larger than they believed. The liminal line is the threshold of change. It's the moment when the story tilts, not dramatically, but loudly, unmistakably. It's the breath before transformation. The liminal line shows up differently in each of my novels, but it always marks the point where a character's world expands. In Who We Were, it's the moment innocence gives way to understanding, when childhood becomes something more complicated. In The Soul Keepers, it's the shift between mortality and immortality, between human emotion and cosmic responsibility. In The Ashborn, it's the boundary between myth and reality, the moment the ancient world breathes into the modern one. In Abigail, it's the instant she sees that her life is not as contained as she believed, that history and the present are not separate realms. In Finding Bonnie, it's the threshold between identity and ancestry, the moment you realize your story began long before you were born. And in Rachel, the liminal line becomes deeply personal. It becomes psychological, emotional, intimate. Rachel doesn't step into another world. She steps into another version of herself. And that shift, that liminal transformation, is what makes her story resonate across the entire universe, or at least my universe. The shadow line and the liminal line are not the same. They're partners. The shadow line is external, a boundary that observes, responds, and sometimes intrudes. The liminal line is internal, a threshold within the character. The shadow line says something is here. The liminal line says something is changing. The shadow line is the watcher. The liminal line is the doorway. And when a character encounters both, that's when the universe expands. That's when the story deepens. That's when the reader feels something shift, even if they can't name it. Not everyone crosses the liminal line. Some characters stay exactly who they were at the beginning. Some resist change. Some fear it. Some never even notice it. But the ones who do cross it share traits. They question their reality. They feel the weight of their past. They sense connections others overlook. They carry emotional or ancestral depth. They are open to transformation, even unwillingly. These characters don't cross the liminal line because they're chosen. They cross it because they're capable, because they're porous, because they're searching, because they're standing at the edge of something bigger than themselves. And once they cross it, the story and the universe changes around them. In Rachel, the liminal line is the heartbeat of the story. Rachel's journey is not about entering another world. It's about entering another understanding, another awareness, another version of herself. Her transformation is subtle, gradual, psychological, emotional, but it's also metaphysical, because when Rachel crosses the liminal line, she becomes connected, not just to her own story, but to the entire universe beneath it. She becomes a point of resonance, a point of convergence, a point where the past, the present, and the unseen align. And that's why Rachel is such a powerful entry point into the shared universe. It's not about what she discovers, it's about who she becomes. Thank you for joining me on Between the Lines. In our next episode, we'll explore how these lines, shadow, liminal, and ancestral, weave together to form the architecture of the universe beneath all my novels. And we'll talk about why Rachel is the moment that architecture finally reveals itself. Until then, stay curious, stay open, and stay just a little bit on the edge of the liminal.